Well, howdy and happy Friday. Yay, Friday. Not that it matters. Friday's no different than any other day of the week around here. Okie dokie. And Facebook supporters, I will see you tonight at 7. We're going to work more on personality profiles. Some were sent to me, so I'll talk about the ones that I have. Try to clarify things a little bit. Thinking of mites makes you itch. I guess me too. So welcome back. This is the end of Parasite Week. We do have the ebook for the ticks, fleas, and heartworms that we did on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We posted yesterday. Oh my gosh, that was only yesterday. This week is like 10 weeks long. After the live yesterday on intestinal parasites, we did post a blog on intestinal parasites that talks a lot more about natural treatments, things that you can do, keeping the immune system healthy, microbiome, all that kind of stuff. So if you didn't see that, you can look on the website for the blog on intestinal parasites. We also did post the link on social media. So today we're finishing out the week by talking about mites. And mites are a little different than everybody else that we've talked about. Mites are 8-legged creatures, so they're in the same family as spiders. They're very hard to get rid of, harder to kill. Just like ticks are harder to kill than fleas. So we struggle with these little guys. And there are a lot of different kinds of mites, and some of them cause extreme problems for our pets and us, and others do not so much. So probably the most common mite that we see are ear mites, particularly in cats. Cats are really prone to ear mites. Dogs, not so much. I've seen them a few times in puppies that have come from less than stellar conditions. But really, when I think of ear mites, I think of a cat problem. So a lot of times when people are posting on social media or sending emails or messages and saying, I think my dog has ear mites because he's got black debris in his ears and he's very itchy. 9 times out of 10, it turns out being yeast, probably more than that. So with ear mites, it's a black, almost coffee ground appearance in the ears. And if you take a swab of that and look at it under a microscope, you will see lots of little 8-legged creatures moving around. A lot of times we see eggs in there as well. And the coffee ground is just the debris and the blood and everything from the ears. And they are extremely, extremely itchy. So if you go to clean ear mites out of your dog's or cat's ear, with cats, be very careful of the hind end weapons because they're going to be doing this as fast as you're trying to clean out the ear. And I think I've got more bad cat scratches trying to clean ear mites out of ears than anything else because they're just so itchy they can't help themselves. In practice, ear mites very commonly are treated with some pretty harsh chemicals, but frankly, you can get rid of them just by putting oil in the ears. So we used to use mineral oil, but you can use olive oil, which is very natural. And what happens is it just smothers the mites. So for many years in our practice, we were using Tresederm. And there's a bunch of different chemicals in Tresederm. It's got an antibiotic, it's got an antifungal. And so I always thought that the chemicals in there were killing the mites, and that's actually not true. It's the oil that is actually killing the mites because it smothers them. So the problem with ear mites is it can take a lot of treatments to get them cleared up. So a lot of times as much as 30 days of treatment, cleaning, your cat will pretty much avoid you by the time you get to the end of that 30 days. But you can use the Away, Animalio Away drops work for that. Yay. Thank you, Gwen. So there are natural ways to get rid of them. They're not life-threatening. They're just annoying. And if you don't treat them, your cats will usually end up with a ear hematoma, which is where the blood vessel between the 2 layers of the ear skin breaks and it fills up with blood. So they have this big like pillow on their ear. And then as it reabsorbs, you get a crinkle, what we call a cauliflower ear. So you do want to treat them if they have them. so that you don't end up with that problem. And we don't see it near as much in adult animals. And I think it's just because, again, the immune system gets better and they're better at grooming themselves and all that sort of stuff. So the next one we're going to talk about is the really itchy mites that we see in cats and dogs. Scabies. So Notodries cati is the feline scabies, and then Sarcoptes is the canine scabies. And then we also see Chilatiella, which is walking dandruff, because you can actually, the dogs will look like they have a lot of flaky dandruff. And if you look at it hard enough, you'll actually see it moving. So that's the one that's called walking dandruff. The Chilatiella mainly infests cats, but it can affect dogs, foxes, rabbits, and people. Scabies is a little more species specific, but it can cross species, and it also can cause very, very, very itchy people. We did get scabies at our house once. My mother's dog got it first. It was before we were living together, and her 10-year-old schnauzer suddenly was so itchy, and the dog never had allergies. She had beautiful skin. Like, she was phenomenal. And so I did all my usual stuff. I did skin scrapings. I did allergy testing. I did all these different things to the dog. Could never find anything. And then we moved in together, and all of a sudden we had 10 itchy dogs instead of one. And I went, uh-oh. And I had looked for scabies on this dog. Sometimes it can be very difficult to find. And I got really lucky on our dog, George. I finally found the mites because he was literally ripping his hair out and going bald. So once I found them on him, then I knew what we had, and we ended up having to treat everybody. Our cats never got infested, thank goodness. So we had the dog mites, and we ended up figuring out that my mother's dog got the scabies from a groundhog that had nested under their deck. And so that little forest creature was nice enough to bring that up close to the house for the dog to get infested. I have seen foxes infested with scabies, and oh man, a scabies infected fox is really ugly. They're pretty bald and scaly and flaky. We had one that showed up in our barn back in New Jersey and was all curled up in a little ball in one of the horse stalls. It looked very, very sick. It was thin and just had the worst skin. We called wildlife control, and little thing got treated and did just fine. Scabies and Chilatiella are generally, again, treated with harsh chemicals, and the traditional vets now want to use things like Bravecto and NexGard, which we all know how I feel about those. So we just won't go there with those. There are a lot of natural treatments for them. Neem tends to work pretty well. There's a couple of products on the market, some dips. What I used in practice usually was ivermectin. I had used that for many years before I became more holistic. And then we started using a lot of the neem products and essential oil products. There is also a product on the market, a lime sulfur dip. It smells like rotten eggs. It is horrible. You really don't want to do it. Groomers really don't want to do it for you. And I really don't recommend it. But that is the other treatment. There used to be a product called Mitaban that was used as a dip. I don't know if that's still on the market. It probably is. But with the new oral chemicals, most veterinarians are like, yeah, why would you dip your dog when you can use an oral chemical? Well, part of the problem is all of those chemicals have side effects. The reason I used ivermectin in practice is because that you can give, and this is actually how I ended up treating all of our animals. I tried natural dips and it didn't work. Probably because I was trying to treat 10 animals. But a low dose of ivermectin given once a week for 3 weeks will take care of the problem. And it luckily is a low enough dose that I never saw side effects from it. I would much rather, the other chemical that is used very commonly is Revolution. I had a client with a Cavalier. The dog had really bad scabies, very holistic client, didn't want to use any chemicals on the dog. So we went with a commercial product that is an all-natural product. And she was so good about dipping that dog, and it did not solve the problem, unfortunately. The dog turned yellow from the dip. It was a Cavalier tricolor. It was bright yellow. and never got rid of the mites. And so she ended up having to, I think she ended up choosing Revolution, which was not ideal, but she had to, at that point, everybody in the family was being eaten. So scabies is definitely contagious to you. It is contagious to all the animals in the house. Not much fun to get, but it is treatable and you can get rid of it. And then let's see, we have nasal mites. And I didn't see nasal mites very often in practice, but I remember having a couple of dachshunds. And I think it's because dachshunds tend to, be going down holes and, really snuffling around in the ground and doing their dachshund stuff. And they were dogs that came in with nosebleeds, constant sneezing. So we ended up sending them to get a rhinoscope stuck up their nose and get biopsies. And a couple of them did come back with nasal mites. Not very common, but we do see them. So the only way really to find them is usually with getting up there and getting those biopsies. Sometimes from the nasal discharge, looking at that under a scope, you might see them. But usually it's with a scope and biopsies. And then the last one that I want to talk about is Demodex. And Demodex is really tough. Again, I've had luck treating, if I'm going to use a chemical, I always used ivermectin. I think it's so much safer than the newer chemicals that are just such horrendous neurotoxins. With Demodex, if we use ivermectin, we do end up having to treat them for extended periods of time. So it could be months. So I did have a few dogs who could not tolerate the drug. We would get some hind end weakness and some issues with it. But the real way to treat Demodex is, and I wish I had found the pictures that I could put up. The real way to treat Demodex is by strengthening the immune system. It is believed that all dogs and cats actually have Demodex in their skin, but it only shows up as a problem in those with a compromised immune system. So almost always we see it in puppies as, they'll come in with a couple little bald spots on their head or maybe on their forelegs. And it's because it crawls from mama, migrates when they're nursing. Certain breeds are more prone to Demodex. What I saw was Dobermans, Pit Bulls, Great Danes, Pugs, Shar-Peis, very common. So the real way to treat this, I had this Pit Bull lab mix that a family adopted. It was a fairly young dog, 6-8 months old. Came in and its head was bald, bright red, irritated, raw. The dog was just digging itself crazy. We did the skin scrape to find the mites, and it had thousands of mites. They were just going nuts. And the dog came out of a shelter. The dog was extremely stressed. It was on a crap diet, and its immune system was really, really, really struggling. So the family was great. It was a mother and son, and they didn't strike me as holistic people who were going to go all out. And let me tell you, this family, they went all out for this dog. So they started making the dog's food. They put the dog on a raw food diet. And we agreed that we were not going to, the dog had vaccines at the shelter, and we agreed we were not going to give any more vaccines because we wanted to clear up the Demodex. We were going to hold off on the spay because we wanted to clear up the Demodex. So we did everything we could to build that dog's immune system. We used things like colostrum and probiotics, really high quality diet, low stress, gave the dog exercise, mental stimulation, all the things that we know help build the immune system. We used omega-3s, we used mushrooms, and we built up that dog's immune system. And they were bathing the dog, but not with a medicated shampoo, just an essential oil shampoo. And within a month, the dog looked so much better. And within 6 months, you would never know that this dog had ever had an issue. And that was without using any chemicals at all. It was just building the immune system, because the immune system, like we've been saying all week, will fight off the parasites. Scabies is a little bit different. Like, even with a good immune system, our dogs had good immune systems. They all got scabies. But with Demodex, that one really, really is about having a good immune system, good skin microbiome, good gut microbiome, and that is what's going to get rid of Demodex. Um, they, like I said, it is really thought that all dogs and cats have Demodex. It just only shows up in those who are really immune compromised. Um, so there are natural things and things that you can do to support your pets. So, for instance, when we had scabies in our house, all the pet beds had to get washed in really, really hot water. We didn't have carpets, but all the floors had to be cleaned all the time. If your pets are getting on the furniture, you've got to take care of that as well with vacuuming, washing, whatever you can. You either have to replace your grooming tools or wash them really, really well to make sure that there are no critters still living in those. I really like the TheraClean micro bubble baths for Demodex. That will help get those mites up out of there. A lot of Demodex cases are cured just by using the TheraClean micro bubble baths along with supporting the immune system. Coconut oil will, or other oils on the skin will smother the mites, just like in the ears. So that's another thing that you can do. Tea tree oil based products, neem oil based products are pretty effective. Make sure that you're using something that is approved for use in cats and dogs, or cats or dogs. Not all products that are approved for use in dogs are approved for use in cats. Cats are not small dogs. They do their own thing. So a lot of things can be done naturally, and I would recommend trying everything you can, just like my client did, just like we did. Try everything you can to take care of the problem, and try to find the source. So for instance, if your animals come down with sarcoptes, try to find the source. Like my mom's dog, it was the groundhog that was living under her deck. I've had, like I said, the foxes have showed up on my farm. So if I had a scabies fox show up on my farm, I'd be a little concerned about, what is the exposure to the dogs. So if you can find the source, you want to definitely get rid of the source. And then do everything you can to support your pet's immune system so that they are going to not taste so good and be more resistant if somebody does show up on your doorstep. In Latin America and other poor countries, they use used motor oil very successfully. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. I would go with olive oil or any other kind of oil. And I have heard that. And I've actually had clients do that bring their animals in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I detox this? So do not do that. But you can use olive oil or other kinds of oils, almond oil. Okay. All right. What is Capstar used for? That is used for fleas. And Capstar, we were talking about this the other day, and I didn't talk about it online. Capstar is, actually, I'll tell this story and I think Teresa's on. Capstar is a pill that will start killing fleas as soon as it gets into the bloodstream. So literally within an hour, you'll start seeing dead fleas. And it can be given orally or you can give it rectally. So a lot of veterinary clinics, and we would do this too, if an animal came in for a surgical procedure and they were loaded with fleas and we needed to get rid of those fleas very quickly so we didn't have everybody in the hospital infested, we would generally give them a rectal insertion of a Capstar pill and then all the fleas would be killed. But we didn't do it as a routine thing. It was if you brought an infested animal in, I can't have infested animals in the clinic. So Teresa Carpenter took her dog in this week for a tumor removal and biopsy to see if it's cancerous. And when she went to admit the dog, the technician said, oh, we give all the animals that come in for surgery a dose of Capstar so that your dog doesn't take home any fleas and doesn't leave any fleas. And Teresa, very holistic, and went a little bit nuts and said, you will not give my dog Capstar. My dog does not have fleas. And if she comes home with fleas, I'll take care of that myself. But you may not give that chemical to my dog. So good for her for standing her ground. And then she wrote it on her admission form in big letters so that they couldn't miss it. And then after she got home and texted me, she called them back again and said, I just want to make sure. So stand your ground, nada, capital letters. Yep. So stand your ground. And see, this is that one size fits all medicine. Like they just have this rule. It's kind of like the rule of, well, your dog has to have a kennel cough vaccine if they're going to be here in the hospital for a procedure. And we'll do it the day they come, which is absolutely not helpful at all. So don't fall for the one size fits all. Stand your ground. She did it very well, very effectively. And it didn't cause a problem between her and the clinic and everybody else. And her dog didn't have to get a chemical that it didn't need. So stand your ground. But that is what Capstar is for. It only works for 24 hours. So for 24 hours, it'll get rid of fleas. So that's how that works. Okay. Motor oil. Okay. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Supporters, 7:00 tonight. We're going to do some personality stuff and whatever we come up with.